That server was seriously incapable and so irritating. Really, she might get away with it because she's just a college student, but that won't cut it in the real world. Moreover, Emily and Julia were really laying into that server earlier. The guys, including myself, were sending them these indescribable looks, but the two of them didn't seem to notice. I was appalled by Emily and Julia's behavior and looked away from them. Then, I turned my gaze towards the server. At least, the server managed to serve a margarita to a customer. However, the next moment, the server collapsed. I immediately rushed over to the server to check her pulse and perform a quick examination. I then asked another nearby server to call an ambulance. Henry and the others watched me in surprise as I did this. A little while later, the ambulance arrived and the server was taken away. As I sighed in relief, Lisa said to me, "Who are you exactly?" "My name is Michael. I'm 32 years old. I have an unremarkable appearance and wear glasses. I seem to be sort of like the stereotypical nerd. Plus, I'm only 5'6" tall and rather short for a man, which doesn't help my looks. Despite all that, I'm a doctor. People who have heard my introduction up to this point might think that my looks don't matter since I'm a doctor. I used to think so too, especially during my student days. Back then, I was negative, lacked confidence, and didn't look great. But there was one thing I was proud of. That was my studies. I was the kind who scored well across all subjects, never getting below 85 on any tests. As a result, in middle school, many of my classmates would ask me for help with math. During those days, I ended up teaching math to quite a few people, but one classmate was notably bad at it. That was Henry. He was a charming, athletic type who was very popular. But no matter how much I taught him, he struggled to grasp math. It's like God gives everyone some sort of flaw. I used to think so, because Henry was that bad at math. But Henry had a great personality. He never pretended to understand something he didn't, and always thanked me after I taught him. I grew to admire his character, which is probably why I was able to patiently teach him math. As a result, our math study sessions continued for a while. Henry and I became good friends, and we've kept in touch even as adults. Interestingly, Henry was one of the reasons I decided to become a doctor. After getting to know him during my student days, I began to see myself more objectively. Adolescent me inevitably compared myself to Henry, highlighting the disparities between us. Henry, being handsome and athletic, would likely have no trouble finding a job or getting by, even without being good at studies. On the other hand, all I had were my studies. I feared that with my current specs, I might not be able to get married in the future. At the time, I was interested in girls, wanted to be popular, and hoped to marry someday. Comparing myself to Henry made me anxious about the future. I realized I had to do something about it, and at that moment, I knew I wanted to get married in the future. It was probably too early to be thinking that far ahead, especially since I didn't even know who I wanted to marry. But for me, at that time, it was a serious concern. From then on, I began aiming to become a doctor. The reason why I chose to be a doctor was because of the ranking of men's occupations women want to marry frequently featured in the media at the time, where doctors consistently ranked high. Looking at those statistics, I thought being a doctor was the only way to go. Moreover, I liked helping people, which made me think that the profession of a doctor might suit me well. Fortunately, my parents supported my ambition to become a doctor. Despite the high cost of medical school, they never objected, which I think was really kind of them. Thus, I smoothly progressed through university, overcame the training period, and became a doctor. I loved my job of saving patients every day, had patients who relied on me, and felt a sense of fulfillment in my work as a doctor. However, my personal life was hardly satisfying at all. So, having become a doctor, I decided to start meeting women. As a newly minted doctor, I turned to dating apps. The reason I chose dating apps over mixer parties was simply because mixers seemed like a high hurdle for me. Somehow, as an adult, I still didn't look great. I lacked the courage to go to mixers, easily imagining being ridiculed by women just for my looks. But dating apps seemed like an easy way to meet women, and I could chat with them before meeting, giving me an idea of what they were like. There were many benefits to using dating apps, making them suitable for a nervous in love like me. However, reality was not so kind. After starting with dating apps, I met a few women, but somehow, they all turned out to be quite peculiar. To be specific, some were clearly only after my money. Some pretended to be single but were actually married, and there were even scammers. Honestly, even though my stance towards women had significantly improved, I no longer wanted to use dating apps. This was not how I had envisioned my future, but reality spared no effort in tormenting me, almost breaking my spirit. Then, my phone rang. It was a call from Henry. "Hello." "Hey, how are you? Don't you want to go to a mixer?" Despite the sudden invite, I was losing hope in dating apps, so I quickly agreed. "Awesome, thanks, Michael. But there's one thing I need your help with." "What's that?" I asked Henry to make some arrangements for me. On the day of the mixer, Henry told me something shocking. "Actually, I never planned to have a mixer." "What do you mean?" Henry explained everything from the beginning. In short, he ran into Lisa, a middle school classmate, at a client's company. Feeling nostalgic, he struck up a conversation with Lisa, and then two of her colleagues joined in, eventually asking Henry to set up a mixer, leading to this event. So, this mixer was actually organized for those two colleagues. I see. Entering the mixer venue, I took my seat. The mixer was to be held with 3 men and 3 women, 6 people in total. The men included me, Henry, and Henry's junior, Ryan. Ryan seemed like a cute, likable guy who would be popular with the older crowd. Then, the women arrived at the venue. Leading the way were the 2 colleagues, the masterminds behind this mixer. However, upon seeing my face, the 2 colleagues burst out laughing. Although I had anticipated being laughed at for my looks, it still hurt. Lastly, Lisa arrived. She was beautiful in middle school, but seemed even more so now as an adult. Then the mixer began, and everyone started introducing themselves. "I'm Michael. I work as a company employee. I'm looking forward to tonight." In reality, I am a doctor, but for this occasion, I've asked to be introduced as a company employee. The favor I asked of Henry was to present me as a company employee to the women and Henry's junior, Ryan, and to make sure this was communicated before the mixer. Of course, this plan worked perfectly, and no one realized that I am actually a doctor. I resorted to this because of my experiences on dating apps, where it seemed that women were only interested in me for my money, likely because I revealed my profession as a doctor. I didn't want to encounter women who were only after my money, which is why I requested this scheme. For the record, the company I supposedly work for is considered a small to medium enterprise, similar to Henry and Ryan's level. However, perhaps because of this, none of the women seemed particularly interested in my introduction. Especially the 2 rude colleagues, who wouldn't even make eye contact with me. From the moment they arrived, it seemed like Julia was interested in Ryan, and Emily was focused on Henry. I guess it was inevitable that things turned out this way. Only Lisa made an effort to speak to me. "You're Michael, right? I'm Lisa. We were classmates in middle school. Do you remember me?" "Oh, yes, of course, I remember." I was happy that Lisa remembered me. and I was looking forward to reminiscing about the good old days with her, but my hopes were soon shattered. Emily interrupted my conversation with Lisa. "Lisa, you look lame if you talk to someone like that." "Yeah, it's much more beneficial to talk with Ryan or Henry." Lisa seemed confused and didn't know how to respond to Emily and Julia's comments. Henry and Ryan tried to ease the awkward atmosphere by intervening, but even they seemed taken aback by the intensity of Emily and Julia. Feeling like my presence was causing trouble, I quietly headed to the restroom. After finishing up, I was about to return to the table when I heard Emily and Julia's voices nearby. Looking around, I saw them standing in front of the girls' restroom and chatting. Not wanting to be noticed, I hid and ended up eavesdropping on their conversation. I was expecting them to be bad-mouthing me, but the content was surprisingly different. "Lisa really can read the room, can she?" "I know, right? Talking to a loser like Michael is just stupid." "Yes. What's the point of befriending someone having a below-average face and working at a small business?" "Exactly. It's because she's naive like that. She ends up doing our work for us." "Right. If we show a bit of remorse when asking, she ends up doing our tasks in our stead." "Yep, fools can be quite useful tools if you know how to use them." Emily and Julia continued their petty gossip, essentially revealing that they only saw Lisa as a convenient colleague who would do their work for them. The reason Emily organized a mixer was to get closer to Henry, and Julia wanted to connect with Henry's acquaintances. In essence, Lisa was being used by Emily and Julia, both at work and at the mixer. After making sure Emily and Julia had returned to their seats, I slowly made my way back to the table, feeling weighed down by witnessing their toxic behavior. Reaching the table where everyone was waiting, I just wanted to leave, which probably made me drink faster. Then, a young female server, possibly a college student, came to our table with a dish in hand. "Sorry for the wait. Here's your margarita pizza." However, everyone at the table seemed puzzled by her words. We didn't order a pizza, so I think you have the wrong table." "Right. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please excuse me." It seems the server had mistakenly brought the dish to our table and quickly moved to another table. I thought the server's nervousness was somewhat endearing, but Emily and Julia seemed annoyed. That server is seriously incapable, and it's irritating. Really, she might get away with it because she's just a college student, but that won't cut it in the real world. Furthermore, Emily and Julia were harshly criticizing the server. The men, including myself, were sending them indescribable looks for their harsh words, but the two of them didn't seem to notice. I was appalled by Emily and Julia's behavior and looked away from them. Then, I turned my gaze towards the server. At least, the server managed to serve a margarita to a customer. However, the next moment, the server collapsed. I immediately rushed over to the server to check her pulse and perform a quick examination. I then asked another nearby server to call an ambulance. Henry and the others were staring at me in surprise. A little while later, the ambulance arrived, and the server was taken away. As I sighed in relief, Lisa said to me, "Who are you exactly?" Actually, I'm a doctor." As I said this, pushing past Lisa, Emily and Julia barged in. By this point, it was clear from their actions how greedy they were, even without them speaking. I was on the verge of sighing. However, Emily and Julia, unaware of my feelings, approached me with sweet, cloying voices and upturned eyes. "So you were really a doctor. You should have just told us. Were you pretending to be a company employee because Ryan and Henry work at small and medium enterprises? Or well, not only are you smart, but you're also considerate of those around you." Honestly, since Emily and Julia are also 32 years old, their approach felt somewhat pitiful. so I instinctively stepped back from them. The shock of their sudden change in attitude towards me left me speechless. Still, Emily and Julia didn't notice my discomfort and kept pressing closer as I remained silent. I had enough and said to Emily and Julia, "Excuse me, but you were clearly looking down on me just a moment ago, weren't you? And now that you know I'm actually a doctor, you are changing your tune so quickly. Are you even aware of how disrespectful you're being? I find this extremely offensive." I looked at Emily and Julia angrily. I rarely get angry at people unless it's a patient who hasn't followed my advice, worsening their condition. It seems Emily and Julia have a talent for infuriating people. I was trembling with anger. Emily and Julia, not expecting me to say such things or even get angry, were visibly shocked by my reaction. Seeing their response only irritated me further. At this point, I wondered if they were geniuses at making people angry. I sighed involuntarily. Emily, seemingly annoyed by my demeanor, snapped at me. "Don't get cocky just because you're a doctor. Yay, if you had told us from the start that you were a doctor, we wouldn't have treated you like that. Don't you get it? The ones getting carried away here are you. I'm utterly appalled by your arrogance. What I'm trying to say is that no matter what job the person in front of you has, it's wrong to treat them so terribly. How can you not understand such a fundamental thing? Michael, there's no point getting worked up over them," said a voice from behind me. Turning around, I saw Henry and Ryan standing there, both glaring at Emily and Julia. That's right. If they were decent people, they wouldn't belittle others like that, Ryan said firmly. It seemed Ryan was also upset after seeing me being hurt by Emily and Julia. With Henry and Ryan by my side, I felt more empowered than before. I felt a surge of energy and warmth in my chest. So, I was able to declare to Emily and Julia, "Let me say this as a doctor, Emily and Julia, it's too late for you. How could you let things get this far?" As I declared this as if it were checkmate, Emily and Julia's anger reached its peak, their faces turning bright red as if they were boiling kettles. "What do you mean it's too late?" "Exactly. We will sue you for threatening us with misdiagnosis and human rights violations. If you really want to sue, go ahead. I have friends who are excellent lawyers, and it's clear to me that I would win against you." Since you seem quite foolish, let me explain. Your characters are flawed. When I said it's too late, I meant that your humanity is beyond saving. Now that I've explained it in detail, do you understand? Do you get it now? And what exactly about our humanity is beyond saving? Yeah, you are getting so worked up just because we make jokes about you a little. How scary. Right. What if he becomes a criminal someday and has a bounty on his head? Exactly. If that happens, we'll just use others to catch him and split the bounty among ourselves. That's brilliant. Well, you can praise me more. Now, Emily and Julia were treating me as if I were a criminal. It's frightening how they immediately reverted to their bad habit of belittling others, even after being called out for it. It seemed like belittling others had become a deeply ingrained part of their daily lives, happening almost unconsciously. I sighed again. Emily and Julia snapped back at me. "What? You still have complaints against us? Really? So annoying. Are you some kind of quack doctor?" That's so true. Right. As Emily and Julia started to get excited about insulting me, I wondered how many times I had seen this today. I was fed up and extremely irritated by their persistent and unapologetic behavior. So, I shouted louder than before. "I have plenty of complaints, and I'm not a quack doctor. My patience has completely run out, so I'm going to say this." Emily and Julia continued to laugh foolishly. "Oh, what are you going to say?" "It must be some quack doctor's diagnosis. How silly." "Actually, I've heard you've been passing your work on to Lisa. What are you thinking? What? How do you know about that? Yeah, who are you really? When you were in front of restroom, I overheard you talking about it. I was really surprised then. Hearing this, Emily and Julia's expressions darkened, realizing they were in trouble. Henry and Ryan, who take their work seriously, sent them cold looks, clearly unable to forgive their actions. They both sighed deeply. It's unbelievable. Abandoning the work you were entrusted with by the company and making Lisa do it is not something responsible adults do. Exactly. And then you have the nerve to criticize the server who collapsed, pretending to be upstanding citizens. It's the worst. As Henry and Ryan spoke sternly, Emily and Julia started to act desperately. No, you've got it wrong. We just had some unavoidable matters, and that's why we had to. Yeah, work is about helping each other out, right, Lisa. Julia, seizing the moment, appealed to Lisa, either seeking help from the current predicament or simply trying to deflect the blame. But Lisa's expression was complex. However, Lisa seemed to have made up her mind and said, "Both of you always left your work to me, saying you had matters to attend to, but I knew you were leaving work to me to go to mixers. I'm fully aware that you were using me, so don't underestimate me." Lisa's unexpected statement caused an uproar among everyone present. What? Why did you agree to do their work, knowing they were going to mixers? Yeah, why did you put yourself in such a convenient position for them? Henry and Ryan seemed to have many questions about Lisa's actions and mindset. Emily and Julia, having been exposed for dumping work on Lisa and attending mixers, were trembling with fear. I continued to watch over Lisa. Because I cared about Emily and Julia, that's why. Lisa, thank you. Lisa, you would never betray us. Emily and Julia approached Lisa, saying this. This scene felt familiar, but by now, I had pegged Emily and Julia as the type to cozy up to just about anyone. I wondered if Lisa would just be swayed by them and pretend to reconcile, observing the women. But then, Lisa made a surprising move. "Don't touch me," Lisa said, distancing herself from Emily and Julia, who were trying to get close. Emily and Julia, not expecting this from Lisa, yelled at her. "What do you mean, Lisa? Don't touch you. We were good colleagues, weren't we?" "Good colleagues. Don't make me laugh. I no longer trust you, and I don't want to be close to you anymore. Plus, I'll be a manager next month, so we're not the same anymore. Can you understand that?" "But you said we were important to you." "That's right. Because we were important, you took over our work even knowing we were going to mixers, right?" Learning that Lisa would become a manager next month, Emily and Julia seemed quite panicked. They probably feared that Lisa might expose their misdeeds as a manager, leading to their potential dismissal. They desperately wanted to keep Lisa on their side. But Lisa was unwavering. Still bringing up the past, "I began to despise you when I saw how terribly you treated Michael, and given your habit of belittling others, you probably looked down on me too, right?" "That's not true." "Yeah, no." Lisa, not trusting their words, turned to me. "Michael, they're lying, aren't they?" "Yes, Lisa. In front of restroom, Emily and Julia were indeed mocking you. They said you were a convenient tool who would do their work if they just asked, with a bit of guilt because they had unavoidable matters." Hearing my confirmation, Lisa's face turned red with anger. "They also said you couldn't read the room for talking to someone like me." "I see. Thank you for telling me." Now it was clear that Emily and Julia were mocking Lisa. "I took over your work because you seemed to struggle with it, but mostly, I wanted to help you achieve your dream." "What dream was that?" Emily and Julia dreamed of becoming housewives. They talked about quitting their jobs and becoming housewives every day. So I really wanted to make that happen for them. That's why I didn't get mad when they secretly went to mixers and took over their work. I see. But there were no signs of them becoming housewives, and after seeing their behavior at today's mixer, I understood why they couldn't get married. I wish I could get back all the time and effort I spent on them. Lisa glared at Emily and Julia. They seemed at a loss for words or overwhelmed with guilt, hanging their heads. The atmosphere turned heavy, but Henry and Ryan began to chuckle, lightening the mood. What's so funny? In this era where dual-income households are the norm, they wanting to be housewives is a bit unrealistic. It's quite childish for adults their age not to understand that. Right. If they were serious about finding marriage partners, they should have gone to a marriage agency instead of mixers. Their poor time management just shows how incapable they are at work. Henry and Ryan's harsh words seemed to bring Emily and Julia to tears. Do you understand now why I said you were beyond help? With my final words, the two nodded silently. Later, Emily and Julia were fired from the company. It wasn't just because they had lied about having unavoidable matters and dumped their work on Lisa. The real reason was their inability to kick their bad habits. Even though they stopped dumping work on Lisa, they began burdening their juniors with it. They couldn't forget the sweetness of having others do their work. Despite being warned, they continued to attend mixers in search of marriage partners. Just like Lisa, their juniors were temporarily exploited by them. Given their nature, Emily and Julia were likely careless and foolish. This is because they were spotted by several colleagues entering a dining establishment with a mixed-gender group, which could only have been a mixer. Upon receiving such damning information about Emily and Julia's misconduct, a dismayed Lisa consulted with the higher-ups, leading to their dismissal. At this point, it was purely a case of reaping what they sowed, so no one offered them words of comfort. As for me, I was able to exchange contact information with Lisa during that mixer, and we still email each other. Our emails mainly consist of encouraging each other to keep up the good work. Lisa successfully became a manager and seems to be busier with work. But I believe she'll manage just fine given her resilience. Having someone to discuss work with was a refreshing and delightful experience for me, as I'd never had such an opportunity before. Working in society may seem like a constant battle with others, but in reality, it's a longer struggle with oneself. Having someone by my side to offer support and encouragement during these solitary days makes me feel like I can achieve more. This has made me realize that perseverance and earnest can lead to rewarding outcomes.